Welcome to the WWII Unfolded. This is an original documentary-style breakdown of why German war plans crumbled without U.S. supply lines, based on historical records and careful interpretation. Let's begin. September 1st, 1939, Poland. German tanks roar across the border in a stunning attack that will conquer an entire nation in just 3 weeks. The world watches in shock as Germany's lightning war demolishes one country after another. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Behind these impossible victories, Germany's war machine was already running on empty. The clock was ticking, and they maybe had 6 months before everything fell apart. What happened next changed history forever. Before we dive in, if you're enjoying this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more amazing history content like this. When German forces invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939, they introduced the world to a terrifying new way of fighting called blitzkrieg, which means lightning war. Fast-moving tanks worked together with airplanes and soldiers to smash through Polish defenses in record time. Poland fell in just 3 weeks, leaving military experts around the world stunned. Then, in April 1940, Germany attacked Norway and Denmark, taking control in days. But the really shocking victory came in May 1940, when Germany turned toward France. Remember, France had fought Germany to a standstill for 4 years during World War I. Everyone expected another long, brutal conflict. Instead, France surrendered in just 6 weeks. It seemed like Germany had discovered the secret to winning wars quickly and easily. But here's what most people didn't know at the time. These victories weren't showing Germany's strength. They were actually hiding Germany's biggest weakness. Germany had a serious problem that no amount of military skill could solve. The country didn't have the natural resources it needed to fight a long war. Think about everything an army needs: fuel for tanks and airplanes, rubber for tires, metal for weapons, and food for soldiers. Germany had to import most of these materials from other countries. Before the war started, Germany had built up stockpiles of these important supplies. Based on what we know from historical records, these stockpiles could last maybe 3 to 6 months of fighting. That's not very long. The quick victories in Poland and France relied heavily on these pre-war supplies and whatever they could capture from defeated enemies. Germany also had coal, which they used to make synthetic fuel and rubber. But this process was incredibly expensive and wasteful. It took enormous amounts of coal to produce even small amounts of fuel they desperately needed. This could imply that Germany was basically burning through one valuable resource to create small amounts of another resource they desperately needed. Here's something that makes you rethink everything. Germany's famous blitzkrieg strategy wasn't just a clever military tactic. It was born out of desperation. German military planners knew they couldn't fight a long war. They didn't have enough resources, so they had to win fast or not at all. The lightning war concept was designed to knock out enemies before Germany ran out of supplies. Strike hard, strike fast, and make the enemy surrender before they realize what's happening. It worked brilliantly in Poland, Norway, Denmark, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. But what would happen if an enemy didn't surrender quickly? What if someone could absorb those lightning strikes and keep fighting? That's exactly what Germany's leaders feared. Every military plan they made came with a ticking clock attached. Adolf Hitler and Germany's top leaders made a critical error in their planning. They focused on conquering territory instead of securing the resources they needed to keep fighting. Sure, Germany captured industrial cities and factories, but that didn't solve their fundamental problem. When Germany conquered France, they gained access to French iron ore mines. The Lorraine region in France produced millions of tons of iron ore each year. This helped, but it wasn't enough to make up for everything Germany lacked. They still desperately needed oil, rubber, certain metals, and other materials that France couldn't provide. Hitler became obsessed with rapid territorial gains. He wanted to redraw the map of Europe quickly. But military historians now see this as a dangerous oversight. Territory means nothing if you can't supply your armies. Germany was building an empire on a foundation of sand. Before the war, Germany had a strong industrial economy. Their factories could build tanks, airplanes, and weapons. But there's a huge difference between building weapons during peacetime and sustaining a global war. Germany's economy was designed for quick rearmament, not for fighting multiple powerful enemies across an entire continent for years. Germany's leaders drastically underestimated how long the war would last and how many resources it would consume. When Britain refused to surrender after France fell, Germany faced exactly the nightmare scenario their planners had feared, a prolonged conflict. The British Navy controlled the seas, cutting Germany off from overseas trade. This meant Germany couldn't easily import oil from places like the Middle East or rubber from Southeast Asia. The situation forced Germany to rely more heavily on its synthetic fuel program and whatever resources they could get from neutral countries like Sweden for iron ore or Romania for oil. But these sources could never fully meet Germany's needs. In June 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union, launching the biggest military operation in history. At first, Blitzkrieg worked again. German forces advanced hundreds of miles, capturing millions of Soviet soldiers. Victory seemed within reach. But then, something unexpected happened. The Soviet Union didn't collapse. Despite losing massive amounts of territory and suffering terrible casualties, the Soviets kept fighting. They had enormous natural resources, huge factories far from the fighting, and most importantly, the determination to never surrender. For Germany, this was a disaster. Blitzkrieg was supposed to win wars in weeks or months. The invasion of the Soviet Union turned into a years-long struggle. German tanks needed fuel. German trucks needed tires, German factories needed raw materials, and Germany's limited stockpiles were draining away. By late 1941, Germany's resource situation was becoming critical. The war was consuming materials faster than Germany could produce or capture them. The lightning war strategy that had brought such stunning victories was now failing. Without the ability to win quickly, Germany's lack of resources became a fatal weakness. The turning point came in the winter of 1941-1942. German forces got stuck outside Moscow in brutal cold. Their equipment started breaking down. Supply lines stretched thousands of miles. The quick knockout blow had failed, and now Germany was trapped in exactly the kind of long war they couldn't afford to fight. Meanwhile, the United States entered the war in December 1941. America had vast natural resources, enormous industrial capacity, and access to global supply lines. This completely changed the balance. Germany was now fighting enemies who could produce more tanks, more planes, and more ammunition than Germany could ever hope to match. As the war continued, Germany's resource shortages became worse and worse. By 1944, Allied bombing was destroying Germany's synthetic fuel plants. Romanian oil fields, which Germany desperately needed, were being bombed. The stockpiles were gone. Germany couldn't properly train new pilots because they didn't have enough fuel. Tanks sat idle because there was no gas. The mighty war machine was literally running out of power. Germany's experience in World War II shows us something important. Military skill and clever tactics can't overcome fundamental resource limitations forever. Germany had brilliant generals, well-trained soldiers, and effective weapons, but none of that could change the basic math. They needed more oil, metal, and rubber than they could possibly get. The Blitzkrieg victories that shocked the world in 1939 and 1940 were impressive, but they were also covering up a fatal flaw. Germany was racing against time, trying to win the war before their supplies ran out. When they couldn't achieve quick victories anymore, the whole strategy collapsed. From the very beginning, Germany's war plans were built on a foundation that couldn't last. The Lightning War wasn't a sign of strength, it was a desperate gamble by a country that knew it couldn't afford to fight any other way. That's why historians now look at those early German victories differently. Yes, they were tactically brilliant, but strategically they were doomed from the start. Without access to the global supply networks that countries like the United States and Britain controlled, Germany was always fighting a war it couldn't win. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new today, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more fascinating history content. Drop a comment below and let me know what historical topic you'd like to see next.